the science behind CBD, overcoming the most common startup problems, and an inside look into what the future might look like. Welcome to episode 40 with the co-founder of Recover, Dan Hunt.
You are listening to Len Jones' Party of Two, where experts and influencers speak honestly and openly about their keys to success. Sponsored by TrueFace.ai, where your face is the key. For more information on TrueFace, please contact your host at ian@trueface.ai. Now, pay close attention, cause you gonna learn today.
What up, party people? It is a phenomenal day to have a damn good day. And if you're curious what the secret is to having an awesome day, I think I'm slowly uncovering the answer. As simple as it may seem, it includes waking up and doing what you love by creating values for the world. The most incredible people that have accomplished so much did so by becoming fully engulfed in the excitement and the euphoria of pushing forward towards a goal. And when we create values for others, we in turn feel valued and fulfilled, which brings us joy and happiness. And when we're full of joy and happiness, things like depression and pain have a hard time showing up to the party. And if you're new to the podcast, our mission here is twofold: to educate aspiring entrepreneurs by dissecting the come-up stories of incredible humans by extracting the golden nuggets that you can apply now to better your life. And second, to have all my friends in life that are making moves to meet my other friends in life making moves, to create one giant community of extraordinary people. Now, I've been waiting a long time for this podcast with my friend Dan Hunt. I first met Dan years back through direct sales. Dan crushed it in his first 2 months, but quickly decided that the industry wasn't for him. After having gotten that entrepreneurial itch, Dan dropped out of school and became the COO and Co-founder of the now public company MassRoots, which allows you to discover the best cannabis strains and products with the help of 1 million enthusiasts on the platform. Now, I honestly think Dan Hunt is one of the most interesting people in the world that I've ever met. I mean, at just 19 years old, Dan raised $42 million for the company while going through a roller coaster of startup bliss and chaos. Dan has since left MassRoots and started a new company as the co-founder of Recover. Recover offers full spectrum CBD paired with all organic ingredients that are used for mind, body, and sleep. I've had the luxury of traveling to multiple countries with Dan, and I've picked his brain on a variety of topics. On this episode, we discuss lessons learned while raising money as both a public and private company, the Adderall epidemic in America, mental illness and how misunderstood it is, latencies in our school systems, science behind living longer in life extension, ways to improve your sleep, and the disgusting reality of the phone addiction epidemic. And for anyone that's listening to this podcast, Dan also is giving us $20 off any products on Recover just by using the code LENJONES20. That's LENJONES 20. Len Jones, Party of Two. So, without further ado, let's jump into it. And we're live.
Amazing.
We're live with the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Dan Hunt. How you doing, homie?
I am super excited to be here.
Dan, I've been to more countries with you than any other friend I've ever met in my life.
I didn't know that. That's amazing.
A lot of good times. And dude, we have a good history together.
We do.
I actually first met Dan Hunt through network marketing, which is so interesting because it just goes to show that direct sales is an entry point for entrepreneurship. It gives people for the first time the ability to realize that they can make money for themselves, build their own business, build their own side hustle. And Dan is a great example of someone that took that fire, took that motivation, and went off and experimented in many different industries in life. And I remember a particular story when I went out to JMU and we started this thing. You see here, the WOH.
Oh, wow. You've got hidden materials that I didn't know about. Oh, WOH. Yeah. Amazing.
We out here.
Yes, we out here.
And I remember you got an email at that time, and that email kind of changed your entire life. Do you want to talk about what that email was about?
So I was in this entrepreneurial club in college. And related to your first point, I got into that club because of my experience with direct marketing. And met a few cool kids. One of them being a girl named Hyler Fortier, and she introduced me to the MassRoots team. They were super early on, convinced that the cannabis boom was imminent and that there was a huge opportunity to create a community of cannabis enthusiasts to talk about products and strains and their different cannabis experiences. But they were just getting off the ground, and I started helping them out and invested in the business at the time, using actually profits that I had made from doing stuff with you guys. And yeah, the rest was history. Then I had decided. I think you were with me at JMU when I was making the decision to drop out.
It was pretty crazy because I witnessed you have this kind of come to moment where you were like, your whole life flashed before your eyes. And I think you were a sophomore?
I was a sophomore, yeah, but it's funny, I only went to school 2 semesters. And I don't know if I should be sharing this, but I actually pledged a fraternity my second semester of my freshman year, right? And I was pledging, and I just stopped going to classes because it was like, I basically just went all in on like the social life of college. And I think to me, like at the time, I really felt like that was the value of college. I was in, I was a marketing major, and business classes in undergraduate schools, for the most part are not that useful. And so I felt super disenfranchised by the material and stopped going to classes. And then at the end, I remember my parents were so pissed. And at the end, I actually went into the health office and basically, and this was partially true, basically, argued that I had a mental breakdown, and that was the reason that I didn't go to classes, so that they didn't just take all of the tuition that my parents were pissed that I had just like lost. And so then I took that semester off. I took the next semester off as well, and then I came back for 1 semester. The idea was like, all right, I'm going to give this one more shot. And that's when I definitively decided that I was not going to continue college. And I was actually, before I had MassRoots cross my plate, I was looking for, good opportunities that could provide. My whole thesis was, there are opportunities out there that I can learn more from than college. And startups was, sort of what I landed on. And so when I was already thinking that, and when MassRoots sort of came into the picture via the entrepreneurial club at JMU, it was sort of a no-brainer to me. And cannabis was particularly good opportunity because at the time it was so risky of an industry that the most talented people weren't willing to get into the space. So the talent density of the competition was very low because there was so much risk. And being 19, I didn't care.
Yeah. So that's what's crazy. You're 19 years old. Everyone, our whole lives, go to college, go to school, get a degree.
Totally.
You get this opportunity, comes into your email address. All of a sudden, you're like, holy crap. You go all in. You straight up put all the cards on the table. You're like, I'm going to go all in with this company. And next thing you know, you're out of school and you're building a business. And then it took off.
Yeah. So it did take off. And we we got timing incredibly right. And, we were basically, the problem we were solving is that people were not comfortable sharing their cannabis experiences on Instagram and Facebook, because at the time it was, cannabis was still really stigmatized. It's hard to remember this, but just over the last 5 years, the stigma has changed just dramatically. At the time when I dropped out, it's changed a lot about college as well. But when I dropped out and, was going to go work in weed, as you can imagine, my extended family wasn't entirely pleased with that decision, and my nuclear family as well had definitely had some worries, if you will. Anyway, so the app, we got 10,000 users pretty quickly. We tapped into influencer marketing really early on.
Real quick, can you explain what MassRoots is?
Oh, totally. So it is, well, when we started, it was just basically an Instagram clone for weed. That's what we started with. We had no idea what we were doing. Literally, my co-founder who built the app, it was the first app he had ever built. He learned to code while he was building the app, and it was terrible. I mean, really, just really, really bad. And it's funny because it was awful, but we had product market fit for sure. I mean, we immediately got users. It was clear that people wanted a safe place to share their cannabis experiences. And so it's just an Instagram clone for weed. And then it sort of evolved over time to do other things that were useful for cannabis enthusiasts.
What was the biggest kind of maybe, I don't know, breakthrough moment where you're like, okay, we got this app, we're making progress, people like this, and then maybe you start seeing die off and you're like, oh crap, what can we do? Was there a major pivot you think that really took you guys from here to here?
there were a few key turns for sure. So I think it kind of break it into chapters. There's our first chapter where we, got the app on the App Store, and we basically just DM'd, or I don't even know if we had DMs back there. We were messaging people on Instagram. I think we were DMing them, yeah, and asking them to promote it. And we were lucky in that there was a real, cause behind this. We were, going to help cannabis legalization, and we did in a number of ways. And people really got behind that. There was already a pre-existing community on Instagram that were willing to talk about cannabis. And of course, the people who weren't, some of them were following those people, and many of these guys, they would promote for free, and it worked. And so we got our first 10,000 users, and that was sort of chapter one. And then, we scaled that up, just going really aggressive on influencer, marketing more than anything else. That's really the channel that worked well for us. We also had, content and played the SEO game and whatnot. And then the next chapter sort of, we took a step back, and in the beginning, we didn't do a good job of tracking all of our data. So it actually took a while to learn what was happening. And once we did finally get the proper analytics tools in place, we learned that people were really falling off after 6 months. So we had really great retention for the first 6 to 9 months. And then people would sort of slowly fall off after that. So it really wasn't sticking. And that's because we didn't build enough utility into the application. And I think that with social networks, you see that a lot of apps do this really well, where they start with utility and then build community. You sort of come for the utility, stay for the community, right? And that's what Instagram did. At first, it was just a photo editing tool. And we did the opposite, which was a mistake. We built a community and then tried to bring utility into it. And that was difficult. And so when we figured that out, that there wasn't enough utility and users weren't seeing real value from it, that's when we started adding in other features to try to bring in that value. And the first thing that we did was product and strain reviews, which was, in retrospect, super obvious as the thing to do, but at the time, there were a lot of different options and directions that we could go, and that seemed to be where the most opportunity is, because cannabis is so intimidating, and the selection and complexity of products. So we wanted to have our enthusiasts review their different products. These are, many of the world's experts were on the platform, and help regular consumers navigate different cannabis products. You go into a dispensary and it's crazy, right? It's unlike wine or, where you've got different grapes, but it's all alcohol. It all makes you feel the same. We've got tinctures and edibles and patches and, joints with keef on them. And I mean, it's just all over the place, right? So that was the problem we tried to solve as our sort of evolution. I wouldn't call it a pivot, as an evolution of the app.
The whole industry has changed dramatically just in the past 2 years. Crazy. But one thing that I thought was very unique was, at one point, the App Store kicked you off of iTunes, correct?
Yeah, totally. We have a few kind of funny stories like that. So the Apple just, removed our app one day. And at this point, we're probably driving 3,000 downloads a day. So our growth machine was turned on. We had unlocked a few paid channels that were working really well, and we just get completely removed. And so, as you can imagine, we are freaking out. And Apple is a black box. We didn't have a person there. There was just no way to really communicate with them on a meaningful level about apps. And if you go and research this, it's really funny. There's this one app reviewer at Apple. They call him I don't know, let's say they call him Dave or whatever. But it's really a bunch of different people, but they just call him Dave. And there's a whole website online somewhere that's talks about all the crazy experiences that apps have, trying to get their app in or back. And so we decided to orchestrate a campaign. This was mostly Isaac, our CEO, actually. It was his brilliance. We did a full-fledged campaign to try to get back onto the App Store. And what we did was pushed our users to send letters to Apple and emails. And we sent about 30,000 of them.
Wow.
To
That's that
Apple.
community working for you.
Yeah, totally. And which is crazy. And it really was because it wasn't about MassRoots. It was about cannabis. Right?
What do you think made them love and feel attached to MassRoots that would make them go out of their way to send an email and take that time?
Yeah, totally. It was the community and the cause, the legalization cause. It really wasn't about MassRoots. It really was bigger than that. It was about cannabis, and we positioned it as, Apple's not being progressive. And they're a progressive company. And so, one day we finally got back in, and it worked. And they actually changed their policies, literally changed their verbiage in their App Store policies because of that campaign. So we still never actually had a meaningful conversation with them, but one day they finally let us in.
Would you say throughout your journey building this with Isaac and your team, you started off with a pretty small team, you grew pretty fast?
Yeah.
Do you think that you just kind of figured it out as you go? Is it just kind of like you make an assumption, you test it, you experiment? Do you think that you've created a system now that is pretty duplicatable to eventually get to where you want to be in terms of business process? Like you always talk about making assumptions, testing those assumptions, making hypotheses. You really think about it as a study. And if you follow the study, eventually you're going to get there. And you do it better than anyone I've ever met. When did that when did you start implementing that theory into your business and look at your business as a giant?
Yeah, it was study? Really it started not at the level of the business, but just in terms of user acquisition. So the best growth teams in the world run on the scientific method. And they create a big backlog of different experiments that you want to run, things that you think might work to drive user acquisition. The ultimate goal being to drive down the price of your customer acquisition cost, and to build a system that is repeatable and scalable, to scale that acquisition. And so we built a growth team at MassRoots, where we had this process where we'd come together every week and we would brainstorm ideas for how we can, grow and acquire new customers, different things that we wanted to do in influencer marketing, or the articles that we wanted to write, or the ad copy for the Twitter ad that we're running, whatever, right? And so we just brainstorm new ideas, and then we would organize them and hypothesize what is the cost of this experiment going to be in terms of design hours, implementation hours, and also what the cost will be, for the ad that we're running, and what we think that it'll drive in terms of customer acquisition. And so that made it really easy to just prioritize what experiments we're going to run. And then afterwards, I kind of fell in love with this process just off of the sort of philosophy that no matter what happens, you win. Because if you set up an experiment correctly, you either succeed and repeat that experiment, as a way to acquire customers, or you learn something. Because you ran that experiment, you were running it on an assumption, and if the experiment fails, that means your assumption was wrong. And so now you better understand your channels. And I think it was like a video that when I was building MassRoots' growth team, was like Brian Balfour was the VP of growth at HubSpot, did like a video on how to run this process. And we did growth extremely well at MassRoots, I think. We unlocked a lot of first channels. Like I remember we did this Twitter campaign that was like someone passing a joint through a phone. So it was like a community, but through the phone. And this piece of creative performed unbelievably well because no one had advertised on cannabis on Twitter before. So you're scrolling through Twitter and all of a sudden there's a huge joint in your face. We were able to really capture people's attention and drive downloads with that. So we were and what we learned over the long term was that ultimately it's the velocity of experimentation that wins. It's so people are so often wrong about what they think, and this shows you that this process dependably shows you that, and you don't waste time arguing over stuff founders waste so much time just arguing about what they think, pontificating, and the quicker you can go from what you think to actual tire to the ground and see what reality is, the better. And that's what we found. And so in that way, your original question was sort of is this a dependable sort of system for growth? Absolutely. It's just a matter of implementation time. And I think today I think that's probably the key distinguisher of the best growth teams, are that they're incredibly fast at implementation.
Are there specific tools that you like to use that do a good job?
I'm obsessed. I'm so glad you asked that, because I am obsessed with Airtable. So Airtable is a database. It's just a relational database that is super easy to manipulate. It looks like a spreadsheet, but it's different in that you can link to records and other tables. You'd have to go and play with it. It's I don't know how else to explain it, but I use that to track everything. Not only in my business, which is not MassRoots, to be clear. We'll get into that in a minute, but also in my personal life. So I have like my own personal sort of like content CRM, and it's run through Airtable. And so I've got data points on everyone in my network and like what their expertise is and whatnot. So it's easy to find people quickly when I have a problem. Airtable is amazing. You just have to go check it out.
Yeah, I want to check it out. Yeah, I really want to get into what you're working on now. There's a lot of exciting stuff. But before I get into that, one thing that I've always found very intriguing and impressive about your story with MassRoots and your whole team and your growth was you guys raised a lot of money.
Yeah, we did. 40 million.
You raised 40 million.
Yeah, we're,
how old were you?
Well, when we started, I was 19. That's 40 million over the course of several years. MassRoots is super unique in that we went public very early. And so what happened is, at the time, this is 2013, it was incredibly hard to get capital from institutions, private, VC firms, because a lot of them had bylaws. This has changed now, but a lot of them had bylaws that were like vice clauses that didn't allow the firms to invest in businesses like cannabis. It was also much less clear then than it is today that whether or not cannabis would make it, continue to be legalized and states continue to fall. Now it's very clear that, the train's left the station and it's never coming back. So these institutions wouldn't touch us. And as a consumer, product, we really needed capital to grow. We definitely made some mistakes here, but we wanted to grow really aggressively, and we grew too fast in some ways, for sure. And that's one of the most common mistakes of startups, I think. But in order to get that capital, we took the company public, because we knew that there was, while we weren't able to get the private money, we knew that there was a ton of demand in the public markets for cannabis stocks. And so it was a way for us to raise more money. And that was, one of the most difficult things about MassRoots was that we were both a startup and a publicly traded company. And those two things are so at odds in terms of, how you operate. When you're a public business, you're very, you have a lot of pressure on you to report good earnings every quarter. It's very short-term thinking. And when you're a startup, you really you're thinking much longer term, big vision, whatnot. And being a public company is also incredibly distracting and expensive. Like the lawyer fees are really expensive, and the nature of the stock being able to be traded and sold by our employees was very tough to figure out how to deal with that correctly. Because when the stock did really well, we had employees who were making a ton of money. And that's like an interesting dynamic, where usually in a startup, like, you don't make money until, you sell the business or take it public in 10 years, or whatever. So there was a lot of really interesting parts of that, experience. But yeah, we took the company public and we raised $40 million, and that was, all just to fuel this growth.
So take it back. What's that like? You're 20 years old, 19, 20 years old. Mm-hmm. You're at the front raising a ton of money, and all of a sudden you're rubbing shoulders with these VCs and all these influential people. What was that experience like for you, just at that age? Like, were you completely confident the entire time? Were you just like...
I was delusionally confident.
Really?
Totally.
Almost too confident, you think?
Yes. I mean, one of the things that's incredible about being naive, I was incredibly naive. I just had no idea how the world worked. I still don't, of course, but I do a lot better today than I did then. And I was so naive, and the superpower of being naive is that you can just have delusional confidence. You know what I mean? You don't understand at that point how hard it is to actually build a business. Yeah, you don't know that. So, I was very confident that we were going to succeed, and that helped us raise money. Like, investors love, a founder who has conviction. That's a key part of being a good founder.
Was there a certain element that you thought helped you a lot? Was it the story you were telling? Was it how you
As
told
it pertains to raising money?
As it pertains to raising money.
Yeah, I think I love this quote: stories sell better than spreadsheets. And that's absolutely true. Like, our world runs on stories, and we had a really good story. Uniting the cannabis community, the problem with cannabis products and strains being confusing and complex. We had great stories, for sure. We're also in the right time at the right place, frankly. I don't know that a huge part of this is just timing. And that's the case with a lot of businesses, is just being the right time, right place. And so we were very lucky, frankly.
But you're learning a lot. You're like out, like you're just a young kid figuring this thing out.
Yeah.
You have a blueprint sort of, but you're like, okay, I need to call X amount of people. I need to get to X amount. And people are like, wow, these kids are amazing.
Yeah. Well, we did have a few, we did some fundraising where we had an investment bank. And so, fundraising on the public markets is entirely different than fundraising for a startup. And so, learning that world was fascinating, for sure. Just the games that are played with public companies and the ways that you raise money is definitely interesting. It's been so long since I've really thought about that. I don't know that I could conjure up the insights, if you will.
Yeah, that's one thing that I've always just admired about you is your personality and how you sort of just go all in with whatever you're thinking.
Yeah.
Sometimes good, sometimes bad.
Yeah. I have been told that I'm very all or nothing.
Very all or nothing. But when you get an idea, you just think bigger. I remember one time I was in your room, I think you're 18, and you have 500 tabs open on your laptop. Mm-hmm. And you're like, I think I have this condition. It's called something. What was that condition you thought you had?
I don't remember.
I don't know. Something some sort of mental thing that you need to have 1,000 things happening at once in order to operate and feel like.
Yeah, I was diagnosed with ADHD early on in my life. Man, mental health is and I've definitely struggled with. I don't know. I've never had an actual diagnosis, but I'm probably bipolar.
Do you think being bipolar can play to your advantage in certain ways?
Totally. I know a number of founders who are hypermanic. So it's a spectrum, right? From depression to mania.
That's what I meant. Hypermanic is what I was talking about.
Yeah, hypermania is, so a manic episode is sort of usually classified by and I am not an expert here at all, to be clear. So I believe it's, you really are delusional, crazy delusional, manic episode, you're running across the street naked, and think that you're God and that, really, really crazy stuff. And, hypomania is sort of just before that. But I think the brain is so complex. I don't think we really understand this stuff at all. And classifying people's brains with these words, I think, is dangerous. Because every brain is unique and complex, and I don't think it's as simple as we currently believe it to be in the medical community. But again, I'm not an expert there at all. But yeah, I think that some people's, especially with bipolar, bipolar is a superpower and a curse. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's cool that you mention it because there's so much simulation based on people that are labeled as these things and they are put into this category that they can't perform right. I think everyone in our generation has ADHD to some level.
Yes. I don't know. It's funny how many. This is, one of the problems with the pharmaceutical industry and this whole thing that I don't even want to get into really, but it's so easy to get an Adderall prescription.
Oh my God.
And so everyone thinks they're idiot. People you just want a study drug in college and then say whatever you need to on the survey, I don't know how many people think that critically about their ADHD.
Yeah.
I think most people are just looking for Adderall.
I had a really good buddy that super intelligent human. You know who this is, but I'm just going to not leave his name out for whatever reason. But he got super addicted to Adderall for like an entire year, just like almost every day.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Was like snorting it, doing it, like every aspect of it. And he would just work 24/7. But he's like, he became a different person. It literally changed him as a human. And he almost feels like he can never get that person back almost.
Oh man. And that's a terrible feeling. So I took Adderall from, or not just Adderall. I actually experimented, I had experimented with many different ADHD. I was really bad in like kindergarten, like just like a terrible troublemaker and
like
all over the place.
Stuff, like
yeah, it was just like I was terrible, and so that's what prompted it, right? And I think I started taking it in like first grade or whatever. And I hope my mom doesn't hear this because she's super guilty about it, because we just didn't, she just didn't really know. But I took it until high school, and then I stopped taking it in high school, and I basically just decided I had the same feeling where when I took Adderall, I didn't feel like a human being. I felt like it really dampened my emotions and senses, and I didn't want to be taking something that changed who I was, and I came to the realization that I needed to learn how to manage that myself in my own way, and I'm still trying to do that, and it goes beyond just ADHD, just
right.
Manage the nature of my mind.
Yeah, I don't think I haven't taken Adderall since college.
Yeah,
I think the only way I could write like a 15-page paper was if I took an Adderall, straight up.
Right.
Like a little small amount, but enough was to keep the Jones like just ripping. You're a machine. You're so much more effective. But it is crazy how that all is going down. But to segue into some of the current stuff you're working on.
Sure.
Now, there's so much I want to pick your brain on when it comes to finance, when it comes to how you think, your philosophies. I know you're really big into stoicism, but I do want to get into Recover because this is new. This is a new venture. One of the co-founders of Recover. Give us the story of what Recover is all about and where you guys are looking to do with this thing.
Totally. So, as you're probably well aware, and many are, there's been a huge market growth in CBD oil, and we've been very close to that. Watching that very closely for several years now. It's a miracle what some CBD products are doing for people when it comes to anxiety, stress, mental fatigue, pain, and inflammation. And we'll get into more specifics here in a second. I've used cannabis for sleep for a long time. That's another one that's huge for people. But there's a lot of problems on the marketplace, and really low quality products. So that was the start of Recover, was that I think this is 6 to 12, several years ago, we became part of this farm. So we have a farm in South Carolina, in Conway. And the farm originally was focused on a product just for children with epilepsy. And so CBD oil has done incredible things for kids that struggle with epilepsy. And in that process, we developed basically proprietary extraction methodologies of CBD oil that is incredibly high quality. So basically, here's the difference. Let me back up. There's a bunch of different details here. So the short answer is that we are starting a business that has 3 different products for mind, body, and sleep that are specifically designed with CBD oil to help people recover from the stressors of life. And that's everything from pain and inflammation to mental stressors as well, to arguably the most important recovery occasion in our lives is sleep. And we're doing this because we've basically figured out this extraction methodology that keeps a super high level of phytocannabinoids in the CBD oil. And a lot of the products that you see on the market right now are actually isolates. And that means that they just isolate the CBD. It doesn't get what's called the entourage effect, which is when CBD and CBN and CBG and all the other cannabinoids that are in the plant interact with each other in meaningful ways and support the endocannabinoid system in your body. We have a much larger vision than that. We're starting with CBD because we were close to it, but we think that there's a huge opportunity in the supplement space to just make much better products that help people. And the notion actually started with longevity. So I did like a bunch of research into longevity. I'm super interested in
longevity in the sense of
living longer lives.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I became obsessed with the idea of not dying for a little while. Wow. When I was in college and went down that rabbit hole. And then again, more recently. And one of the things that's most interesting to me about longevity research, and we're very early on, relatively speaking, we just recently started thinking about that this is even a possibility, that we could, perhaps extend our lives by 50 or 100 years. There's real money going into that goal now, where that wasn't really the case even, 20 or 30 years ago. I don't have the exact numbers.
That's an exciting thought.
Totally. Yeah. There's really, it's really just I think it's only 5 things that account for 80% of deaths after you're 50 or whatever. And it's heart attack, stroke, Alzheimer's, cancer, and heart disease. I'm pretty sure. You could Google that. But, so our longevity research is figuring out how to prevent those things from happening, right? And that's the key strategy of living a longer life. And one of the things that we're finding, or that they're finding, is that a key component of longevity is building what's called homeostatic capacity, which is basically your ability to bounce back from external stressors and maintain a state of homeostasis in your body, right? And so this is fascinating to me. It's why people, I don't know if you've heard of Wim Hof, but people are jumping in frozen lakes and taking ice baths because it's a stressor that helps make your body stronger and able to basically return to homeostasis faster. That's the theory anyways. To the extent that that's proven, I'm not sure.
You took one of his courses, didn't you?
I did not a full course. It was just a day with him at the Summit conference a few years ago in LA.
He climbed, is it Mount Everest in his boxers or something?
Something along those lines. Yeah, he is. You should check him out. He is a crazy man.
That's
nuts. He does a number of. This is a segue, but he does a number of breathing exercises in addition to the cold exposure. But this is becoming very popular. It's the reason that people do, that some people do infrared saunas as well, and a number of other things. And this guy who I learned this about, he actually eats incredibly healthy for 30 days, but then he'll allow himself to have garbage because he wants his body to be able to handle it, to build that homeostatic capacity. And so that's a simplified version of a topic that's way above my head. But I became super interested in this, and what's fascinating about cannabis is that there's this relationship with the cannabis and all the phytocannabinoids that are in the plant and our endocannabinoid system. And only fairly recently have we learned of the endocannabinoid system's importance in regulating homeostasis in the body. Right? So this is a winded way of saying that cannabis is sort of this miracle in supporting your endocannabinoid system, and your endocannabinoid system is incredibly important in maintaining homeostasis. And being able to be in homeostasis is what allows your body to heal from external stressors.
Could staying in homeostasis for an extended period of time be a direct correlation to lowering your possibility of dying?
And yeah, that's the notion. That's basically the theory or the hypothesis, and there's very early on in studying this, but it looks very promising that might be the case. And so our company doesn't have anything to do with longevity, but this is sort of how this became interesting to me. And so we're the business is called Recover because we believe philosophically that the important thing to do from a health and wellness perspective is to be really mindful of the stressors that are in your life and to recover from them. And health and wellness is growing so quickly. People are taking so much better care of their bodies today than they ever have before, which is fantastic. But it's incredibly hard for a consumer to navigate. It's so confusing, like what to believe as it pertains to what to eat and how to be healthy. There's not very many things that are clear. A few of them are really clear, like processed foods are bad for you.
Right.
Sugar's bad for you.
Terrible.
You should exercise.
For sure.
You should get sunlight.
Absolutely.
But beyond that, there's a lot of propaganda. There's a lot of studies that are kind of inconclusive. And we're building a line of use case specific products that are both effective and healthy. And so you have like these performance supplements that are effective, like pre-workouts, for example, right? Like you feel them, they're effective. They're not placebos, but they're filled with garbage. You look at the ingredients list and there's like 100 ingredients, and there's just so much garbage in there.
And that's like a clear wave that's happening in the world right now. The world is shifting to a healthier lifestyle.
Totally.
Groves.
Totally. And people just aren't going to buy those. I think GNC, you walk into a GNC today and it's like, what is going on in here? I mean, it's just so many of these ingredients lists that have hundreds of chemicals and are terrible for you. Right. And so but on the other end of the spectrum, you sort of have self-care and to the extent of like your spa and whatnot that is sort of useful but less sort of specific in what it's doing for you. So we're building a line of supplements that are for specific use cases, and we're starting with mind, body, and sleep. And so mind is for mental fatigue, stress, and anxiety. Body is for pain and inflammation and muscle recovery, and sleep is to help you get to sleep faster and to have deeper and better sleep. And so we combine CBD with a number of other all organic ingredients that help for these use cases. So for an example, our sleep product combines CBD oil with L-theanine and chamomile tea extract, just 3 ingredients to help you with sleep, versus there's a number of melatonin products on the market that are habit forming, and there's some research that's coming out about melatonin that linked to depression that's super concerning.
Well, we were talking the other day, and your vision is kind of potentially a lot bigger than this.
Yeah.
Like the CBD thing is a great entranceway into the health and wellness field.
Right, exactly.
But your vision is so big. And so, because I mean, to this day, especially with my own health challenges, I find myself spending groves of money on my health.
Yeah.
And it's addicting.
Yeah.
I like doing it. I like putting my money towards something that makes me feel good, whether it be acupuncture, whether it be massage. But basically these things I'm spending a lot of money on it, but I'm happy to spend that money. And do you think that there's a very big opportunity to create something where people can go and recover like you were talking about?
Yeah, that's the idea. So we are starting with a line of purpose-driven supplements, and what we intend to do next is open up a retail location where people can go and have a number of recovery experiences. Our PR agency would kill me if I gave you any more detail than that.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
You were at this event that one time you were telling me about. It was like a very super exclusive event with like 5,000 entrepreneurs or something like that.
Summit.
The summit. But you remember you got in a round table with like 3 individuals or 2 individuals, and you ended up having one of the most inspiring, awesome conversations of your life.
Yeah. We happened to have a dinner what this conference did was every night. So it was like, I don't even know if you'd call it a conference necessarily, but basically Summit is like, you can look it up online. They bring a bunch of entrepreneurs and artists and interesting people together. And I think there's like 3 components. There's like, speakers and that kind of thing. And then there's like art and music experiences as well. And what they did, this was like 2 years ago, it's here in LA, and they like every night you get set up on a dinner, and so like you get a text that's like, go to this restaurant, and one night I was there, I sat down with one guy was like this director of a play, another guy was a journalist who worked for Ariana Huffington, and another was like a big real estate guy, and so we had like a diverse sort of group at this table, and it was just us 4. And we just happened to have one of the most interesting conversations I've ever had in my life about all sorts of different things.
When do you feel like most alive as a human?
During that, probably. There's a few things I feel most alive at. I think about it through the context of flow. We really try to just optimize for flow.
Explain flow.
Flow is when you are so engulfed in an experience that you are one with the experience. This is super sort of philosophical, but when because there's things that literally happen in the brain, basically parts of your brain that turn off when you're in flow.
What can flow best be compared to that people are more familiar with? Like meditative states.
Yeah, maybe. But I think it's just when you're fully engulfed in experience that like you're fully engulfed in doing something that you're just in pure experience. Like when you're, most times you've got this mental chatter in your head that's sort of going on as you're doing things, right? And you're like thinking these random stuff, and that ceases to happen when you're fully engulfed in doing something. It happens, I think most frequently for people when they play music or play sports.
You just get
the
tunneled.
flow state is talked about a lot in the context of athletics, for sure, right? Like you can think about the quarterback of the football team, during the fourth quarter when they're down by 3 points, and driving for the game win, like that he is in flow. So anyways, I get flow from a few things. One is writing, and so I write a lot. I try to write every day. Of course, that doesn't happen, but
by writing, do you mean sort of like journaling?
Yeah, journaling. I don't sit down and say today I did XYZ. Like journaling is sometimes thought of. I write about different things that are interesting to me. It's funny. I've got probably 50 articles I could put up, but I just haven't done anything with them yet. For a while, I was writing like 1,000 words a day. I think sort of go through phases.
That's got to be one of the most rewarding hobbies in the world. That and cooking.
Yeah.
Because if you can cook bomb food, your life is just 10 times better.
Yeah, I've wanted to be a good cook. I don't enjoy it that much.
Right, but you love food. You're the biggest foodie I know.
I do love food.
What is it about food that you love so much, the culinary experience?
The culinary experience, I just love food. I don't know that it's that deep.
No, it is deep. You'll spend like $20 on like your outfit. Mm-hmm. Like you'll spend no money on your clothes, your cars, your Airbnb, your hotel. You'll spend as cheap as possible, but you'll drop bills on the 5-star phenomenal cuisine. Because you mentioned that it's like art to you.
Yeah, totally. And I've had phases where I care more or less about these things, right? I do think it's like sort of like the world's like oldest form of art. Like we've been eating and preparing food and coming around the dinner table or in the cave in the case of our ancestors for 100,000 years. And that's cool to me. I think that like thinking about it through that lens. I don't have any profound thoughts on food, to be honest. I just really like food.
But the journaling aspect is huge. Just being able to record your thoughts and be able to know what you were thinking a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Like how was your brain working?
What's funny about it? I don't think I ever have gone back and read what I wrote.
That's first. I just want to laugh. Like that's funny.
Yeah.
But at the same time, maybe that's not the purpose. Maybe
it's just, I don't think it is.
But you seem to be someone that's very like, you are very Tim Ferriss-like in that you kind of run your life as a human experiment in a sense. I think, you might not think so, but from my understanding of you, I think so of that of you. You're very like, when you go into something, you go all in on it. You dive in, you don't sleep. You just learn everything you can about it. You become engulfed in it. Yeah. And you become so passionate. Like you're a very passionate dude.
Sure.
And that passion can just kind of just breeds out to so many different things.
Mm-hmm.
How do you foresee, like you got the Recover thing going. You're doing a lot of good stuff with that. Yeah. You have a big goal with that, big dream with that. One day you might be able to go into a Recover lounge, get your infrared sauna, get your massage, get your all sorts of stuff that's going on in that environment. But what do you see, like, what do you think's the ultimate goal for Dan Hunt? Like, out of all the things you've done, out of all the books you've read, what do you think's like the meaning of your life? And like, what do you think you would really want to go to? Like, where does this entrepreneur journey end?
Big question. I don't know that I've figured that out yet. Or that I ever will.
You might have had some hunches.
I do know that I want to just do things that I enjoy and be surrounded by people who I love.
Right.
And that's about, I want to always be working on something that like lights me up. That's super important. I'd like to have impact in a positive way, not super important to me, like where that is. Like, it's not like super important to me to work on climate change or to work on AI or to work on, right? It's a lot of different things are interesting to me, but it would be great to have impact, but it's not a.
One thing that I think you said was really interesting to me was we had a conversation about digital nomads.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think people call themselves digital nomads anymore. I think it's segueing out really quickly. But you talked about like, yeah, everyone wants to travel the world and be a digital nomad, right? Like I was doing that in Colombia. You visited me, which was sick. But like a lot of these people that are traveling so much, they never feel like they're home. And I think it was you who mentioned something to me that people that are traveling so much, they never really build that layers of home. Like when you have a home, when you have friends, that like
real community. And
like humans, we're supposed to be in a community. Like, I truly think that, I mean, me personally, I know after this podcast, we have like 15 people coming over. So we're cooking the dankest chicken. It's going to be phenomenal. But just like having good people around that all love you and care about you, it's so rewarding. And I know for me, like when I got really sick, like because of the stomach F's everything up. It plays with your like depression, anxiety. Like anyone that listens to this podcast knows I'm a pretty stoked human, like pretty jazzed up on life. But man, like when the stomach's wrong, like it flips everything upside down, which is another thing about depression and anxiety. A lot of it starts in your stomach. Like a lot of people aren't actually crazy. They actually have stomach issues.
So going back to your earlier question, so there are two big areas that I'm super interested in terms of vision for myself, problems that I want to work on. One of them is community. And I think about it through the lens of, evolution. And for 100,000 years, we traveled the earth in little tribes of 25 to 40 people. I think the upper limit was like 30-ish on these hunter and gatherer tribes. So super tight knit communities you're doing everything with, right? And I think that we're at a point now where a lot of people are really asking like, is community necessary? Not just it's like necessary for mental health. And there's a breakdown of community in America right now that I think is a tragedy. And it's for a number of reasons. One, there's far less religious, at least in our age bracket, people aren't partaking in going to church or partaking in religion at all. And that was a key driver of community for a long time. Mm-hmm. And so there's that, and there's a few other factors, and I haven't gotten super deep on this, so I don't know all the reasons, but there's definitely a breakdown of community in America, and I think it's directly responsible for the rise in depression and mental health issues that we're seeing. And part of it's people being super connected online and foregoing in-person community events and whatnot because they have this stimulus online. There's stuff going on there with social media, of course, and people are really lonely.
My dad brought this up, so I don't know how much factional this is. Just throwing it out there. But where he was talking about like how when we're kids, we have a newborn baby and we get a room for the baby and the baby goes in a separate room. In Western culture, that's very normal, right? But like in most other cultures that like you have like 5 to 7 people sleeping in one bed. Like there's community, like there's like people, and that's why like, I don't know, I'm very fascinated by just the culture in India. Yeah. Because they seem like they're so much happier than a lot of people in the Western world.
That reminded me. So there's a few things there. There's the religion. There's the decline of Main Street, which is like the notion that like, the Main Street in these little suburban towns all over is less popular. People are going to chains or buying their stuff on Amazon, and that would be a congregation of community. And more people are moving. It used to be that, 100 years ago in America, you're very unlikely to leave your hometown. You'd build community over long periods of time. You're with your family and whatnot. And more people now are moving, among our friends, you move several times, for different jobs or whatnot. And that's becoming more and more common, it seems like.
I wonder if that has to do with just social media pressures too, because there's always so much beautiful images of people traveling. They're always feeling like they're missing out by not moving.
Yeah, it's terrible.
It's so terrible, but like Justin Peterson, we did a podcast like episode 13 or 14 or something. JP was up visiting with his wife, Lee, and he was saying he came down, we got an acai bowl. By the way, we should get an acai bowl before everyone comes. I got the dank spot.
Amen.
But he was saying how like he's like, Len Jones, when's the last time we saw each other? And I looked at him, I'm like, I couldn't even remember because I see him all the time on social media. It was 5 years ago. And I'm like, what? I felt like I just saw you like, I don't know, the other day. And that's because of that social media. It's so amazing. The Instagram stories, you're able to keep people in your life without being like right there. And that community is great because you can pick up where you left off. But with that said, it's also just as bad. Like you mentioned the screen time issue. We're putting way too much time on our screens, dogs.
Yeah.
Like, Jesus. My screen time hit like 9 hours the other day. And I was like, whoa. Damn. And I feel embarrassed almost by it. Because there's no way you're that productive. There's no way.
Yeah, I think the thing that's so tough about Instagram is like, everyone's just putting up highlight reels of their life. And then you have everyone's looking at everyone else's highlight reel and looking at their reality. Because
the average is 6 hours. 6 hours is the average amount of screen time someone is using on their iPhone right now.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And like, I mean, it's my alarm when I wake up.
Yeah,
I put it to sleep. Audible's phenomenal. It's such a tool. I don't know why I just threw Audible in there, but Audible is a great tool.
Yeah, for a while I was actually locking my phone away from myself. I got this little like kitchen timer box. You can like search this on Amazon. And I think it's just like kitchen lock timer or something along those lines, meant to like lock up cookies or something.
Right.
And so you can only have one cookie a day, and then you set the timer and it unlocks.
I remember how stoked you were when you first told me. You're like, dude, I'm putting my phone in the box, bro. We only got like 5 more minutes to chat.
Yeah, so I did that for a while.
Did it help?
It did help, but I think my hunch is that there's something unhealthy about that type of restriction. Like I'd rather have like just the willpower myself to do. Like I don't want to have to lock things away from myself. Like I've done that with cannabis as well. Like if I like was smoking too much in the morning or something, it's not helping me, get my work done. I've locked it away. And I think that there's just something that's not great about that. So I stopped doing that, but I do try to turn my phone off, and I do not use my phone as an alarm. I think the two things, so I've had this Oura ring for almost a year now, and it tracks, you should look up Oura Ring. It's an incredible company. It's just a little ring you wear that tracks your sleep. And I've been like isolating variables and trying to figure out like what impacts my sleep. Because for me, I've definitely learned that like the biggest, like if I'm in sort of a depressed mood, it's because I didn't get enough sleep. Like I've learned like sleep is just so important for me to have energy, for me to be mentally clear, for me to be in a good mood. And since I have sort of these, mood swings, that's super important for me to sort of regulate. And so I've really tried to optimize my health and wellness around sleep first. That's really the most important thing. And I really think that's the case. And I haven't gone deep on the research here, but there's this book called Why We Sleep that's incredible, that you should definitely check out, that does go deep on what we're learning about sleep and how important it is for your body to bounce back and get into homeostasis, for you to perform, etc. And this is a winded answer, but the main thing that I found and for my sleep in my life was that using the phone before bed totally destroys not only my the time in which it takes me to go to sleep, but the quality of my sleep as well. And so I've been trying really hard to 2 hours before bed, turn my phone off, turn all electronics off.
That's called the Oura Ring?
It's called an Oura Ring, yeah. It's really cool. It's like, I think it's like $250 or something. So it's a little expensive, but you get really cool data. You get, it's not just sleep. You also get like heart rate variability and heart rate variability. There's a correlation between heart rate variability and like general stress level. So you can sort of monitor like how stressed you are, and we're learning it's really important to manage stress for your health. And so it's great
that as well, right?
Yeah. I think, I don't know that Fitbits do heart rate variability actually. I don't know. I'm not that hip on the subject, but anyways, I think that the two terrible things that so many people are doing, and they're just the worst habits, are using your phone in bed before or after you sleep. Waking up and immediately like going on Instagram, I think is like one of the single worst habits you could possibly have. And so many people do that. I've done that many times. And so I stopped waking up to my phone. You think about it, like the alarm is such a terrible experience. And for 100,000 years, we woke up to the sun. And then now we have this like beep, 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 beep. Like it's terrible. It's like the worst thing ever. And then the the, snoozing over and over again, which so many people do. I've got friends who I've had times where I've snoozed 10 times. And you're just falling asleep and waking yourself up, Also terrible for sleep, obviously. So I got a sunrise clock, and I think this is a product everyone should own. And it just, so that I can turn my phone off, and it wakes me up by slowly illuminating the room with light from like an orange hue. I think Philips is the one who produces it. And it has a little like bird chirping sound that gradually gets louder. And so you sort of come out of sleep naturally. And that's made a huge difference.
And that's a separate device, so you're not playing with your
phone. Right,
phone.
so that I don't have my phone. Because, if I don't do that, if I don't shut off my phone, I will go on my phone immediately.
That's a whole, there's got to be so much money in that opportunity right there.
In helping people with phone addiction?
Yeah.
I think so.
That's got to be the next $1 billion. Like if someone can truly master that and figure that out, next biggest company. Huge.
Yeah, I think it's good. People are definitely becoming at least extremely aware of the problem right now, which is good. Like we're making progress. These technologies are fairly new. Like we have to figure out how to live with them as humans. I'm very optimistic that we will. But yeah, phone addiction is something that I think it's a really fascinating thing, and it's something that obviously a lot of people struggle with.
Would you consider us all cyborgs?
We're slowly becoming cyborgs. That's for sure. Ever since we had the desktop, we started with the desktop. Right? We started with computers in these huge rooms, right? And then they're on our desktop, and then laptop we can carry with us. And then cell phone, the computer's in our pocket. And now I've got an Apple Watch. I've got a computer on my wrist. I have a computer on my finger. AirPods, the computers are getting closer and closer to us and more intimate. And I think augmented reality is coming up on us a lot faster than people think. There's companies making incredible progress in AR. And it seems fairly... seems fairly obvious at this point that that's going to be the next medium in which we use computers. I think Apple's probably less than 2 or 3 years away from launching their first version of augmented reality glasses. I think that's going to be a huge that's going to be a really meaningful point in history for a number of reasons.
I remember I used to love Sims when I was really younger. Like
Sims, the game?
I remember me and my cousin Travis. It's a beautiful day in Lake George. We're living in he has a beautiful spot right on the water.
Amazing.
So dope.
That's awesome.
Great upbringing because of that spot. And we're like, it's a great day, but yet we're clocking in 7-8 hours, playing Sims, living this fake life on Xbox.
Yeah.
I think when AR comes out, people are going to get lost in it. It's going to be both so amazing that you can be anyone, do anything, it's going to be so crazy, the integrative nature of AR.
Yeah, well, I think AR is a huge opportunity for technology to get out of our way and be more contextually driven as well. We have incredible utility, right, from our phones, the ability to hail a car to me at any point. And it's just unbelievable, the capabilities that we now have because of our cell phones, but they really get in our way in having to look at this little box. If I have augmented reality glasses on and I've got my AirPods in as well, and so I've got both voice and sight, I can just say out loud in real time exactly what I need, direct me to the closest sushi restaurant, and have a little arrow in front of me that brings me to the closest sushi restaurant. And now I no longer have to pull out this box of my phone and stare at this screen and be disengaged with life, right? Right now you have to disengage with your experience in order to go into this phone experience and then come back out. AR is an opportunity to integrate these capabilities into our experience in a way that allows technology to get out of our way so that we don't have to do that. And that's super exciting to me.
This is a little left field, but what do you think is the timeline for Elon Musk's self-driving cars?
Wow, this is such a hot topic, and I'm not an expert at all. I don't know, man. He's obviously made some super aggressive assertions on timeline. I think last time he said it's 2 years away or something along those lines.
I heard it's a year and a half, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not the one to answer that question. Okay. I don't know, yeah.
You're a big Tesla fan, though?
I am a big Tesla fan.
If you were to buy a vehicle...
It would definitely be a Tesla. I don't think I will own a car anytime soon. But if he's actually able to fulfill his vision of turning a car into an asset, that's incredible. That's the long-term vision of Tesla, for those who don't know, is to build a ride-hailing service, with these self-driving cars, so that you can actually buy a Tesla and then have it be making you money while you sleep.
Joining the fleet.
Right. That makes a lot of sense to me. There's a lot of controversy over his actual method of self-driving technology. So like you guys must be pretty familiar with this stuff at TrueFace, right? I think my understanding of it, you should ask your CTO, I bet he'd know, that most people are using LiDAR. Elon's using cameras, and there's just like a ton of controversy over that. Like a lot of people just think he's not going to figure it out with cameras. But
cameras is a funky topic because people get really upset about it. Like the idea that they're being watched. Everyone's being watched already. Like every time you go into any retail store anywhere, you're getting watched. You just don't see it because it's not in your face. But when it's in your face, people are like, why are you recording me? What are you doing? What's going on? But everyone's already being recorded.
Yeah, that's
vision technology is going to transform everything.
Yeah, the notion, I remember there was a moment when I really got it, like what it means for a computer to see. And like what that means for our capabilities is crazy.
One thing we're working on at TrueFace is threat detection. So basically, cameras can recognize guns, assault rifles, weapons. And the idea there is school shootings in America are outrageous, should not happen. But the idea there is maybe not just schools or whatever, being able to recognize a problem instantly and alert authorities. It's kind of amazing. Like where the technology is getting at and the safetiness of everything.
Cyber warfare is the new warfare, as far as I can tell. Who knows what's going on, at the highest levels of government and whatnot, but seems like there's a lot of that.
How long do you think until Amazon's dropping our stuff via drones?
Did you see that thing with Jeff Bezos and his wife? Did you see that, like...
The divorce?
So I haven't looked into this too much, not just the divorce, but the texts that were released. Like Jeff, I remember I read this article on it. Someone hacked Jeff Bezos' phone. And like, I just thought that was crazy. Like, you got to imagine Jeff Bezos as the richest person on earth has pretty good security.
Damn.
And someone got his, text messages.
Yeah.
So crazy. I think, my anything you put in writing or that is on the internet, I think you should just assume you should be comfortable with that being on a billboard. And if you're not, don't do it.
Right.
Because I don't think we're gonna have everything's at risk.
Right. Yeah, it changes everything. It's like that picture of Mark Zuckerberg. That went viral of the little piece of paper over his video camera.
Right.
So what's he incentive? What's going on there?
Yeah, everyone has those now too. I saw you have one.
Yeah, it's clutch.
I have one as well that slides, so you can slide it.
Yeah, add that to your list of gadgets for all the listeners.
Right.
Make sure you're not getting peeped on. So, Dan, this is a staple. And, we talked a lot about what you're doing with Recover and some of the exciting stuff that you've done with MassRoots and just the learning journey. And I'm stoked just to continuously monitor your learning journey because you just see things very different than a lot of people I've met in the world. And I think that's it's very clutch to have friends that also inspire you to think bigger and be bigger on top of just having fun, right? It's very important to be surrounded by good people. But if you were to go back in the past, okay, for you, I'm going to go ahead and say 18 years old, before you got the call from MassRoots, before you jumped into that, before you even went to school, and you could have told yourself 1, 2, or 3 things, and you could have said like, yo, listen, homie, I got like 3 to 5 minutes. Like this is you 6 years from now. And if you could have said to yourself a couple things, what would you have said to yourself to save yourself a ton of time, money, and maybe just...
If I actually did that, I wouldn't say anything because I wouldn't want to mess up. I wouldn't want to mess with the past.
Lame answer, though.
Yeah, but lame answer. So I get the premise. I don't know, man. I've never really thought that hard about that. Maybe I would say that like most things don't matter. Most things just really don't matter that much. Both in the case of in business, especially, as a first-time founder, just get wound up over so many different things that you then look back on and realize just don't matter that much, and you just wasted so much stress and anxiety and energy. on these things that just don't matter that much.
Right.
So I'd try to tell myself to take a lot of things a lot less seriously. I think I would also tell myself to focus more on having fun.
Interesting.
Yeah, because I think we do our best work when we're having fun. And there were definitely times that, just like overly stressed and overly serious about everything.
Yeah, like you're taking away years of your life because you're
yeah, and I mean,
you're putting all these unnecessary weights, mental weights on your shoulder.
Totally.
You think it's the end of the world, but it's not.
Yeah, and one of my favorite quotes is like, most things are not as good or as bad as they first seem. I think that's super true. Like you go, entrepreneurship's a roller coaster, and you got to be really, I think, careful about how you ride it. When you think that everything that good happens is like going to save you and be like the best thing ever, and then your expectations are crushed because that's never the case. And when you think everything bad happens is the end of the world, I mean, you're just riding that roller coaster hard, and that's really tough on your body. And, I think a lot about not burning out and how to not burn out, because it is a real thing. I do think burnout is a real thing, and it really sucks. I've definitely burnt out before. So, this is a marathon, not a sprint. That's definitely a newer perspective I've had, that like I just think on much longer timelines now.
So stuff doesn't matter as much as you think it does.
Also, I think
have fun.
Yeah.
And what's number 3?
People underestimate. This is like, I think Warren Buffett or someone said this. It's like, you overestimate what you can do in a year and underestimate what you can do in a decade. I think I would say that as well. And that like, I think people go through these cycles, and I've definitely done this, right? Where you like set a goal, like a really aggressive goal on like a 6-month timeline, and you just overestimate what you can do. And then you don't hit the goal, and you become super like upset with yourself or disappointed, and then, give up. And I think that like a longer term perspective is super important, because the greatest thing in life is compounding interest in all things. If you're building wealth, the compounding interest is how you build wealth. When you're building relationships, compound, knowledge compounds. And so on a 1 year, if you're just looking at your first year of a 10-year compounding thing, it's pretty unimpressive, and you sort of feel like you're not making enough progress because that compounding interest hasn't kicked in yet. So I would tell myself to take a longer term view. And I would even say I'm not quite there yet. Like right now I'm thinking in terms of the next decade and like what I want to do in the next decade, and having that patience with myself. But soon enough, I'd like to be thinking on 50-year timescales. What's really important in the context of the next 50 years. So I think longer term thinking I think we have just too much short term thinking in general.
Right. But I also think we need more goal setting. Is something that seems so obvious to the successful, but it's something so overlooked by society. People don't have goals. Yeah. If you ask someone like, what are your goals? If they can't answer those things, it's like, what? What are you doing? Yeah. What's your goal? And it's like, that's a good lesson for everyone listening. Do you know your goals? Do you have a 1-year goal, a 3-year goal, a 10-year goal? Right. You should have those goals, and it's a great exercise. There's a book called The Art of Exceptional Living by Jim Rohn. Shout out. And he does this thing where you write out 50 things right now that you want to do. Write out 50 things that you want to accomplish or have or do in your life. Out. And then rank them 1 through 10 based on how long it would take you to get them. And then go through them after looking through that exercise. After you've ranked these 1 through 10, then decide which ones do you actually want now that you've seen how long it'll take and what you want to do. And then it boils it down to what's a 1-year goal, what's a good 5-year goal, what's a good 10-year goal, et cetera. And then you get that excitement, because once you kind of get those little wins, you realize those things are going to accumulate, and it's possible. That's what excites me about life, because I don't know, I've always kind of talked down on myself since like, Jones, you're too silly, man. You're not focused enough, bro. Like, everyone does that, right? Of course. You're not good looking enough. You're not a good enough speaker. You have ADD, like blah, blah, blah. But it's all bullshit. Totally. And like, there's people a lot less smarter than you and a lot less qualified than you living your dream, and or people need you to step up and make advancements to society. Yeah. Totally. I think it was like Peter Thiel had said, like, courage is in shorter supply than genius. And I think that's definitely the case. There are tons of incredibly smart people, but courage is pretty rare. People who are willing to take big risks is fairly rare, and you have to get over fears to be able to do anything. Right. I do have some 10-year goals. I'd like to
build a really high impact business. I have 4 goals, and I've done this exercise as well. Sort of like the Warren Buffett famous one is he was like talking to his pilot or something, and he said, what are the 25 things you want in the next 10 years or something, and he wrote all of them out, and then he said, okay, now cross off now rank them and cross off the bottom 20, and that's now your things to avoid at all costs. And this is a lesson on focus, right? And there's really 4 things that I want to do in the next decade. One is build high impact businesses. Let me back up. I want to do these 4 things not because what I acquire for them, like whether that be wealth or status or any of those things, but because I enjoy doing them. And I think that's super important, because on the topic of goals, a lot of people want things, material things especially, for the wrong reasons.
Right.
And I've thought a lot about that, and I really want to just optimize around my personal day-to-day experience. Like, to me, if I have to grind and do things I hate for 10 years to achieve something, to acquire something, whether that be a position or a house or whatever, that totally sucks, and I'm not willing to do that. So the 4 things are: build high impact businesses, because I just think business is my sport, and it's so much fun. Write a book, get a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and build a community. And those are the only 4 things that I want to do in the next decade. And I'm trying really hard to just eliminate everything else. And so this is core to sort of my emerging philosophy, if you will. I'm calling it removalism. Which is basically just trying to just remove shit from my life as the key strategy to improve my life instead of adding new things. And I think it's interesting because we have so many messages around us by the nature of marketing and advertising. Everyone wants you to buy something, and they're telling you that you need to add new things into your life. You need to start running. You need to start, reading more books. You need to start whatever. But there's an infinite number of things that you could add into your life. It's really hard to know what the correct things are to add into your life, but there's a finite number of things that you're currently doing, and it's often pretty clear what you need to stop doing. I think any one of us could tell you right now 2 or 3 things you're currently doing, or people you're hanging out with, or jobs you're taking that you probably shouldn't take. You hate them, or it's not good for you, or whatever. And so I try really hard to be mindful of that. It actually all stemmed from the Marie Kondo, her method. I read that book, and I actually chatted with her for a little bit.
Really?
Once. Yeah, I met her in LA at Summit, actually. And I read that book when we were in Dominican. I don't know if I was ever talking about it then.
Yeah, you were.
Yeah, and that book's just about material things, right? And now she's famous on Netflix and stuff. I haven't seen it yet, but apparently it's a huge show where she goes into people's houses and helps them clean it. Yeah, she was. She barely speaks English. Barely speaks English. So it was tough she had a translator, and even then it was kind of tough to have a real conversation with her. But regardless, it started with this, and her book is super simple. You don't need to read the book. It's, basically the Kondo Method is this. You take everything you own, you put it in the center of one room, you go through everything one by one, you hold it in your hand, and you ask yourself, does this spark joy in my life? And you could spin that question a couple different ways, but the core notion is is this something that I truly love? And if you don't, you figure out a way to get rid of it, and hopefully give it to a Salvation Army or whatever. And if you love it, you keep it. And if you do this, then you're only surrounded by things that you love. And imagine being in a world only surrounded by things that you love. And I think the same principle applies to not just material things, but to your habits, to the people that you hang out with, to the beliefs that you have, the ideas that you have about the world around you. And that we're much more likely to make progress on our lives by focusing on what to remove and allowing serendipity to bring in additions when it does. And it will. You'll always add new things into your life when you discover them. But I think we're better off just removing, and more so today than ever before, where we're just over. We weren't meant to for 90,000 years. Humans, woke up and hunted and ate food and hung out with their family and had sex, and that was it. You know what I mean? And now, the level of complexity that we're dealing with and the amount of noise is we were not designed to handle this. You know what I mean? The amount of information that's coming at us all the time is super overwhelming. Another reason I think people are anxious and having mental health issues.
Yeah.
And so I try to really reduce that. I do not read the news at all, ever. I think that's one thing I've removed that has seriously improved my life. Because I also think this goes back to the timeline thing, which is that most news just doesn't matter. Like it matters like on a, for 2 days and then it's gone. And to give mental energy to something that's so insignificant, these are, Trump said this, Trump said that. It's like, I don't care what Trump said. Like, I'm not going to be able to change currently where I sit, be able to have any impact on our government.
It's so fascinating how you can F up so royally and no one cares a week from now.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, yeah, exactly. And so if there is something that's super important, I'll hear about it. Like I have friends who do read the news and like they tell me these things, And I think in terms of information filters as well, nothing beats really great humans. If you're surrounded by like really great humans who like read a lot of blogs and stuff, like they'll get you the good stuff. So you don't have to worry about doing that. And so I've cut out the only form of content consumption I really do now is reading books. And there's a few blogs I think that are really good. And there's a few podcasts I've listened to as well. But I try to generally consume nothing that's news, nothing that's short-term focused.
This is a little left field, but Jeff, I read something about Jeff Bezos once, and it talks about accomplishing tasks because people are like, okay, cool, I got my goals, but now how am I going to put these into action?
Yeah.
And one really cool exercise you can do daily is you can write down everything you want to do. Say it's 20 things, 20 tasks down from picking up your prescription at CVS to all the way to creating an entire new funnel or whatever. You write down all those goals and then you think which 3 have the biggest ripple effect on all the others.
Interesting. I've never heard this.
And that's a way to attack multiple goals at once. So you start with the ones that are going to affect everything. So you're accomplishing so much more at once. Just a random little key nugget there.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. There's a few things that you can do, that are like, even if you're not super clear, it takes a while to like build a clear vision for what you want for your life for sure. And I think, rightfully so, many people at our age have no idea. But there's certainly a few things you can do that are going to be useful no matter what that vision ends up being. Building wealth and community and becoming persuasive. And there's a number of skills that are sort of, super widely applicable to that point that I think are worth focusing on no matter what you're doing. Yeah, that's interesting. I've never heard that before. I hate to-do lists, though. I dislike to-do lists. They work for some people. They don't work for me. I'd like to be able to wake up, my vision for my life, my day-to-day experience. I want to wake up and work on whatever I want to work on. That's super important to me, to like be able to go with the flow, literally. Whatever I'm drawn to on a day, if I think it's the most interesting thing today, then that's what I'm going to do today. And that's really important from a life experience, like a quality of life for me, to like have that freedom to be able to like work on whatever is the most interesting problem to me on a given day. And I think that when we impose to-do lists on ourselves, we lose opportunities to dive into things that are interesting to us just because we want to.
So in order to have that lifestyle that you want, you need to be able to work with a team. You need to have a team.
Yeah.
Because certain things, like I have a to-do list when I produce a podcast. I need to make sure I have A, B, C, D, E, F, G all figured out. Otherwise, it's not the way I want. But if I had a massive team, I could actually just not worry about that.
Yeah, and I think usually so there's like tasks, right? There's like I need to pay a bill or and that's separate, right? Where I try to just bundle those, and I'm terrible about doing small things. I mean, I will put off, this is kind of a funny story. I had my car in Denver. Someone broke into the car and took my registration and my license, took my license off the thing. They're trying to steal the identity of the car or whatever, or however that works. I had to go to the DMV to get a new license. And of course, in the back of my head, I'm like, oh, this is going to be a nightmare. I don't have any of the materials. I need new everything. I'm going to have to go through all this process. I put that off for 6 months. I literally did not drive my car for 6 months just because of how badly I did not want to go to the DMV. It is a terrible habit. What I'd like to do, what I aspire to do, is be able to just bundle tasks, the shit I don't want to do, into one day a week and just get it out of the way so that I can focus on whatever is most interesting to me at any given time. And that's obviously not always, sometimes you just can't do that. You have an incoming crisis that you have to deal with that is urgent. But I think things are usually a lot less urgent than they seem. It's the balancing between urgency and importance is super interesting to me. I think we often over-index on urgency when we should be just putting in the work on the important things every day. Things are not as bad or good as they first seem. Things tend to not be as urgent as they seem.
Right.
People, especially in startups, people freak out over things, make things seem like they're so urgent. And I think they'd be much better off of just, focusing on the core important aspects of the business every single day and just doing that, and not letting these urgent things rattle them.
That's one thing I've learned just in our evolution of our business is just like when things hit the fan, it's just kind of like, oh, this is burning. Oh, this is burning. Oh, this is burning. It's no longer like, oh my God, this is. It's right. There's always going to be big issues happening.
Totally, and you've got to, in startups, you have to let some fires burn. I mean, like, so that you can put out the biggest ones.
Is that like a Katy Perry song?
No, it's definitely not original. I've heard someone say that before. But you have to pick your battles, right? And like some things are just going to be fucked up, and you have to accept that. And that's one thing that is, being a second-time founder now, it's probably the thing I'm most grateful for is that like it is, dude. The roller coaster of MassRoots was so crazy. We raised $40 million. We went public early as a startup. We were in the cannabis space on a legal gray area. We fought Apple. We held concerts with Lil Wayne, and we had epic board battles between our CEO and our board, and you can read about that stuff online. And it was such a roller coaster that like nothing, like barely anything phases me when it comes to startups. It's just part of the game. Shit's gonna be fucked up, and I try really hard to be calm about stuff now, or actually it's sort of comes more natural now. Just from that experience, because after you get sick of freaking out about things over and over again.
So this is one thing that I love asking everybody that we speak with, that we talk with, anyone that's a high performing entrepreneur or someone that's just making big moves in their life. Now, if you know me, I'm obsessed with things like fish. Anyone that's helping the environment, or someone that's living their dream, or Joey Coleman, who felt like his life was so stale, so he bought a 50-foot sailboat, rebuilt it from head to toe, sailed it to Nicaragua, started a business doing pirate sailboat trips, and like living your dream life, like stuff that we dream about, people making moves. But it all starts out with taking a step in the right direction. So a question I love to ask is, what would you say to the person that currently might be, say, working a job they hate? Maybe they're just stuck in the minutia. They got bills to pay. They feel they feel like they're not learning. They just feel like they're just kind of living in someone else's dream. They're stuck in a schedule. They're stuck in a rut. Life is so boring. They're just not into it. Or someone that's killing it, making $300,000-$400,000 a year. They got the lifestyle, the car, the house, but they just still feel like they're not living up to their purpose. They're living someone else's dream. They're not doing what they really want, whether that be going sailing or starting a business. So part of them really wants to jump in, but they're just scared. They don't know what to do. What would you say to that person that's right on the step of making a huge decision in their life?
Do it. I don't know. That's tough. I think it's so, I think it's such a tough question to answer because it's so individual. It's so contextual. It's different for everyone. I think it'd be hard to make like a blanket statement like, it's always good to take the risk, because sometimes it's not, right? Some people leave their company and that was a mistake and they can never go back to the position they had before. Sometimes it does make sense to be more strategic and save up money, for a few years, even though you don't love your job. I'm incredibly lucky to be able to do what I love every day. Yeah, I really don't know how to answer that question. I know that's super lame.
Yeah, that's okay. It's pretty lame, but not everything can be cool, bro.
Yeah, I mean, I think people usually know. I think you can distinguish between like be mindful or aware of like when fear is getting in the way of something that you should do, right? Like you just know on a deeper level. And I think when like then you need to go for it, because you will just regret I've had that happen several times now, and the regret is so terrible. Like when you should do something and then you don't do it.
Living with that fear of regret's the worst.
Oh yeah. And, there's definitely things you can do to manage regret, but, I think,
to manage regret.
Yeah. Cause regret's not productive, right? It sucks. I've definitely dwelled on things in the past before.
Yeah.
What does that do?
Yeah.
Beyond learning from them.
True chains.
Yeah, I also think something that people don't realize is like how much better they'll be at things that they love doing. Anyone who's incredibly good at what they do, it's because they love doing that thing. You know what I mean? And so I think that people underestimate how good they could get at something that they love. If you don't know, if you haven't been in one of the situations where you just get obsessed with something. So something might be really intimidating, like going in and, quitting your job and learning to code might be super intimidating to you. And you might think that it's like really hard to do that. But if you find that you absolutely love it, it's not really that hard because you're able to dig into it. So
true. And nowadays you can find passion in anything you like.
Right.
As weird as it is, there's a community for you.
Totally.
Weirdos unite.
Yeah. All sorts of little sub cultures that emerge online for any type of person.
All right. Well, I mean, man, we got a bunch of people coming over here soon, so we got to wrap this up. But
okay.
Dan Hunt, man, is there anything else that has just been pouring on your mind? I'm excited for you to go on your media blitz for Recover. We're going to be hearing a lot about that soon.
Yep. I'm excited as well. It's going to be great.
Thank you
Thanks
for listening to another episode of Len Jones Party of Two. If you enjoyed it, please leave us a review and subscribe to stay up to date on our new episodes. And remember, hope is not a strategy. Keep making moves. Till next time, peace.